All right, guys, welcome to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm your host, Charlie McGrath. It is the 19th day of December, the 2 days before the end of the world, I say jokingly. And tonight we got a great program line for you. We're going to have James Wright coming on here in just a minute. So if you have questions or comments or you want to hear about the Freemasonry, now he's been on with Karen before, but this is the first time I've interviewed him. I'm excited to get him on here and hear the information he has to give us. If you have questions you want to call in and ask him, feel free, 877-342-6673. So, Brett, we will take callers in this first half here. And the second hour, we'll definitely be taking calls. We're going to have Rob Hannes back on, and he's the podcast, and always a lot of interest and a lot of questions when he's on the program. So keep in mind, hour number 2, Rob Hannes of Preppers Podcast is coming on. And if you have questions on the direction we're going and maybe the hand Freemasonry has in it, get over into the chat room now or call in at 877-342-6673. Again, hello to all the Rinse Radio listeners as well as the folks on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. If you want to join the 50 or so people I believe I have in chat right now, go to wideawakenews.com, click on the microphone in the right-hand corner, and you can join in the chat. I'll be monitoring that for the program. So if you have questions for James during the program, I'll pull them out of there. Lots and lots of interesting, terrifying news coming out today. And I want to apologize because I've had probably half a dozen emails now about the lack of videos that I've been putting out, commentary videos, and I'm in a place now where I will be able to start back to my number of 2 to 3 commentary videos a week. Now, thanks to the work of Gary Hindershot, we do have these programs Monday through Thursday, every one of them, or Monday through Wednesday. Every one of the programs, both hours, are posted up on YouTube. But the number of commentary videos, certainly over the last month, has fallen off. Mainly because I'm just at the tail end of this whole recovery period from surgery. So the time is my time's starting to free up a little bit more. My health is certainly feeling much better. So and there's absolutely no way that I can look at the information that's coming out daily and not put out more commentary videos. 3 to 5 to 10 minutes long. I could. There's enough information to talk about that I could certainly do that every single day. So if you're one of the ones, or if you were concerned or wondering what's going on with the commentary videos, that's the story there, and look for more of them. And the other thing is, if you're not signed up for our newsletter, please do it. I think we have about 1,000 people right now signed up for it. We have been able to get to the point where we're putting out a couple of these a week. And instead of boring you with a bunch of analysis on individual stories, we're taking what we think are the most critical news items of the day and packaging them up and sending them out. So these headlines and some commentary will come to you a couple times a week, but they're stories that we here at Wide Awake News are following and believe to be absolutely critical. Now, like I said, the information that is coming out today is not surprising to me. We're all enthralled, and we've all been inundated with this massacre in Connecticut. Lots of arguments going on in alternative media about the connection to LIBOR and how deep the conspiracy goes. I posted a video earlier today on YouTube. On Wide Awake News, of the father of one of the victims. And, I said last night on the program, I said Monday night, and I said Sunday night in a video that the alleged connection between LIBOR and the father of this butcher the claim has been made that there is a connection. Now, the people that I trust have told me they are 100% sure that this is accurate and verifiable. But to this point in time, I'm also getting a lot of information from people saying, no, there is no connection. So for the sake of argument, let's just get rid of that, okay? Get rid of the LIBOR connection. The fact of the matter is the guy works for GE Financial Tax Division, vice president. He works for a corporation that's too big to fail. He works for a corporation to receive billions in bailout money. And the whole setup, as far as how he's allegedly estranged from his son, who's on psychotropic drugs, and seems to be another patsy event like we saw in Aurora, that connection is 100% real. If you look at other evidence that's coming out on this, like I said, I posted a video today at Wide Awake News that is allegedly the father of a 6-year-old victim. Now, it's a 27-second video. Get over there and watch it, after the show or during the break or whatever. 27 seconds, it'll tell you everything you need to know. Look, I don't know how many people listening to me right now have kids, but I'm sure, I'm 100% sure everybody listening to me right now has a family member. And if your family member was gunned down, and in some cases they're saying 11 rounds into babies, right? And your whole world has just been ripped out. Your soul has just been ripped out of you. This is what this is tantamount to, right? This is the absolute most horrific thing you could possibly ever imagine as a parent. There's nothing that could happen to you worse. Nothing could personally happen to you that would be a worse event to go through than what these parents had to go through, what they're going through now. Nothing. There's burn in hell. It would be a far better thing to a parent than getting the news that 11 rounds have been pumped into their kid. There's not one thing that I could possibly think of that would surpass that in the horrific category. Now, with that all being said, this 27-second video shows you a guy whose kid allegedly was killed the day before, who is joking around and saying, "Well, just read the card." Okay, and you hear a voice from off camera, "Yeah, just read the card." And then you have 10 seconds of him mustering up some tears. And this isn't something Photoshopped. It's a guy who recorded this right off CNN. Right off CNN. He's standing in front of his camera or his television recording this. You have a guy asking what he's supposed to do, read off the card, and then he wells up and clears his throat and joking around, going from joking around to absolute state of depression in 27 seconds. Watch it. So the connection to LIBOR, maybe it's there, maybe it's not. But there's all kinds of other evidence around this event that says it stinks to high heaven. And you couple that with the fact that the day after this, not even the day after this, the day of this event, we have all these petitions showing up to implement gun control at whitehouse.gov. We have a nonstop full court press from the mainstream media to implement, excuse me, this kind of legislation. This, along with the other headlines of the day, showing that the government is becoming more tyrannical on the citizenry. The government is telling us through actions in court, saying, we're going to throw out any lawsuits that have to do with killing American citizens by drone strike. This information is at wideawakenews.com as well. This is a setup from start to finish. We can focus on this horrific event. While we're doing this, we find out the National Defense Authorization Act has now stripped out the verbiage that makes it illegal to detain somebody indefinitely. So while we're watching what the left hand's doing, the right hand is plunging a knife into the soul of this nation, stealing the last bits of freedom that we might have. So it is more important now than ever to be 100% vigilant and test every piece of information, every piece of news through a filter of skepticism. Filter through the fluff of the mainstream media, filter through the lies of the politicians, and look for the real reason on why they want you focused on the left, while the right hand again is plunging a knife in you. James, I'm sorry I ranted on there a little bit. James Wright, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for being with me tonight.
Thank you. Likewise, Charlie.
You know what? We're going to have a break here in about 1 minute. So first of all, do you have any? Let's get this out of the way. Do you have any websites or books or anything that we should talk about or get mentioned before we get rolling?
Well, yes. My website, which my good friend Vinny helped me set up, is
Love Vinny.
Yeah,
I love Vinny, and hold on, because my timing sucked as usual. We're going to talk about your websites and a whole bunch more on the backside of this break. Please, James, I accept my apology for cutting you off there. Guys, hang tight. We're going to be back with James Wright, more Wide Awake News Radio in just a few minutes. Hang tight. All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm your host, Charlie McGrath. It is still the 19th day. We're joined by James Wright. I rudely cut him off because of the break in that first segment. So, James, first of all, give us the sites where we can see your work. And those of you listening on Justin TV, you heard us talking about his publisher, which is New Falcon Publications. And we've determined that's the best place for him, or to serve James's interest and to show that to his publisher that he made the right decision for publishing his book. If by the end of the program you want to purchase his latest book, please go to newfalconbooks.net, click on the political category, and you'll be able to access his material from there. But James, give us the contact information where we can see your work.
Yes, that would be on facebook.com/Occupy Freemasonry. And, of course, any of the listings, on Barnes & Noble or Amazon or any of those also should link to it. I know that there's been some problems in links being taken down and some mysterious things like that, but other than that, it's pretty easy to find, and then I try to keep the information straightforward on that side. I'm working on a real website. Had some hang-ups in that because I'm not too technically inclined, so... right now, that's the best place, and it is at least set to where you don't. If you're not very conducive to Facebook, then that's all right. You're supposedly not supposed to have a profile to view the material. So,
yeah, and I've run into issues with that in the past, where I've tried to view material there. Although sometimes it's worked and sometimes it's asked me to log in. Wide Awake News does have a Facebook page, but Bonnie runs that, and I don't even know the password to get into it. So, but I certainly recommend everybody, if they're wanting to buy the book. Are we pushing folks towards New Falcon Publications?
Yes, newfalcon.com, the category politics. Yes, they publish some. That's their tagline is publisher of rebellious and controversial material. So, and
since 1979, I'm reading it right now.
Yes.
Well, James, yep. Give me a bit of your background. Give me, tell me your story. I know you've been on with Karen before, but this is the first time you've been on with me. So, if the folks that haven't heard you on before, give us a little bit of your background.
Right. I suppose the easiest, quickest way to sum it up in a nutshell is I come from a very well-to-do family that has very, very centuries-old roots in, at first, Freemasonry, and then deeper into the past, the Templar Order and all that. And from a young age, I was groomed for that, and in my early 20s was kind of shoved face first into it. And at first, I would say that the Blue Lodge experience was okay, being that it was in Dallas, where I'm from, Dallas being the central hub of commerce of Freemasonry on the planet. It's very politicized there, so it was a bit of a Shark Tank. However, just keeping it, at a certain distance, whatever, at the end of the day, it wasn't such a nuisance, and I actually made some very wonderful friendships there. The problem was, which Freighter X and I always have agreed on in our work, which is very parallel, that the Scottish Rite comes into play, and that's when the problems start. Right now, all across the world, Blue Lodges, which are by nature supposed to be technically under the York Rite and under the Grand Lodge jurisdiction of their state or country, in some cases like in Europe, they all have the Scottish Rite characters who show up to the lodge meetings and totally sit there off to the sides, and tell everyone in the various chairs, seats, titles, what to do, how to do it, and then, of course, once you're a Master Mason, you are heavily pressured into going 32nd degree Scottish Rite, etc. And then once you do that, it's just a can of worms from there. They want you for endless charity, endless donations, and all that, and that's all well and good. I'm not knocking that, but the methodologies and the mechanisms that they use to achieve that are what comes into question and are highly unethical, and by their own admission, and this is where a lot of Masons have difficult time with hearing what I have to say about this, by their own admission on the Supreme Council, one of the former Sovereign Grand Commanders, the Supreme Council, Mother Council of the World, Washington, D.C., that runs it all, wrote a book very publicly claiming that, they do employ mind control techniques. They've done mind control, remote viewing, and interestingly worded behavior manipulation from a distance research at one company in particular called SRI International. And, things like this, I'm sorry people have to accept that these things do go on. And what frustrates me a lot in what I do is I keep hearing these words made much more popular here lately than they were, say, years ago, such as the Bilderbergers and the Bohemian Club and all that. And of course, those things are, of course, real and very questionable, shady, cloak and daggery, etc. But what people don't realize is the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry sits at the top. The Supreme Council oversees the whole blimey thing from all around the planet, and at least as much as they can with their outreach. And so you have a situation unfolding where they're the true rulers. They're really who you look to when people ask that question you hear all the time, well, who is the Illuminati? Well, that's your answer. And they employ a lot of people to go on the internet, on blog sites, on social media, post websites of their own, all with this PR mechanism making it look like it's all these other things. Always point the finger elsewhere, when in fact they're hiding in plain sight across the street from the White House. So that's sort of the premise of all this. And so I got snagged, back to how I factor in. Suddenly I get snagged from this long heritage of meritorious Masonic service in my family into a administrative position with the Supreme Council. And this was unheard of. It had never happened before for anyone, I think, under the age of 50, and I was 28 when it did. And
okay, hold on a minute. We'll pick it up there after this break. And I have just a ton of questions, and I already can tell, since this is going to be halfway through this first hour, I'm going to have you back on. But guys, hang tight. We're going to be back with James Wright, more Wide Awake News Radio in just a few minutes. All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. James Wright is our guest. We're going to continue. Those listening on Justin TV, I had asked James a question, and I warned him ahead of time that he's probably going to have to repeat it all, and that's what we're about to do. So the question I had posed to James, is you break this down to the folks who, have just heard about Masonry, Freemasonry, and how it's tied to the Illuminati, or is the Illuminati, and how it's, its symbolism is everywhere, and how it's influential, how it has influential members in power positions around the world. But, there's Mason lodges just about in every town, in every state in this country. And, they all can't be bad. So break it down for us, James. And you started to say, you were telling us during the break, it starts at the Blue Lodges. So let's start there and work our way up here briefly. If I'm out of high school or college or whatever, and I'm working at a place and there's a Mason there, and he convinces me to go to his lodge and join up, I'm sure it's for all the right reasons, and it sounds good up front. So what is the hierarchical chain inside inside of Masonry period?
Well, the reference that I was making was, like Frederick says, the secret war inside Freemasonry is absolutely true, and it starts because on the local, round-the-corner level, you have your Blue Lodge, your neighborhood Blue Lodge, where the guys are good. I'm 99.5, I'm sure, of all small town, what have you, Blue Lodges are fantastic. It's these Scottish Rite characters that you have to pay attention to and worry about, because they're definitely up to no good. And so you become a third-degree Master Mason, right? And you move. Well, then you're approached that very night to either continue with York Rite, become a Templar, or do Scottish Rite. But the emphasis is put on Scottish Rite. York Rite is tossed aside.
Who comes to you with it? Is it a Scottish Rite higher up that comes to you when you reach this level and tries to convince you? Okay.
Absolutely. And so you get that. The petition is almost filled out overnight, which is the application. And so, you go, you do Scottish Rite, you're made a 32nd degree Mason, and that's when the really, the favor calling in starts. And so to tie it back, let's go from bottom to top to bottom. So now you're at the Scottish Rite, where the Supreme Council, which I made reference to, has a program built for themselves called Sentinel, a computer program. And this keeps track of every Mason on the planet so that when they decide they want something, they pull up any region, locality that they want and figure out who the guys are that work in the various vocations. If they need a plumber, if they need a attorney, or maybe perhaps, let's say, a corrupt officer of the law, then they seek them out. And that's where their power lies. It's in the fine art of networking. I don't think the world's ever seen anything quite like it, really. I mean, Rome and the Vatican pales in comparison. So that's your mafioso aspect, and when that starts to enter. So if, in other words, if you go very heavily into work at the Scottish Rite, you're going to start running into these problems and seeing this for yourself, because all of the higher degree Scottish Rite, very dedicated Masons that I've even bothered to hold communications with since this all began, they pretty much agree with me, yeah, what happened and what is happening is disgusting. And
what's happened to them since they have reached that plateau and joined Scottish Rite? Now they're being constantly hounded for favors and for contributions and for money drives and that kind of thing.
Oh yes, you can rest assured that you will never get that 33rd degree or hold any of the very high positions. Like I was special assistant to the Secretary General, but you could never ever hope to be Secretary General or a chairman of the board or Sovereign Grand Inspector General over a certain state or anything like that unless you contribute, I don't know, anything from $1 million to probably several. So, and that's the name of the game. And then once they have that in place, then they rely on everybody else to still want that. And, they say jump, everybody else says how high. And that's the nature of the beast from within.
Question. If, you reference like the mafioso or the structure of the mafia, which I think is, very apropos. However, if Don whatever calls you up and says, I need a favor of you, it's because they have some kind of leverage over you that you're going to comply. And if in some cases the leverage is we're going to kill you. How is it? I mean, I'm understanding where you're going from you're starting with the Blue Lodge and then you make it to, in your case, before you were 30 years old to a 32nd degree Mason. Then you are coerced or maybe manipulated into the Scottish Rite when it turns out that they're just pimping you for money or favors. I mean, how come people aren't just falling by the wayside in this organization? Like saying, enough, I'm out.
A lot of them are now. That's the thing, is they're at a point in their history where they're all basically standing around scratching their heads in what they call their breakout strategy sessions in DC and Dallas and etc., where they don't know what to do anymore. They ask that every day. And everything that they do now seems to be, at least to me, having worked in the capacity I did for them, very, very stupid. They've made lots of very strange, almost childish moves in business and PR that have really worked against them. I mean, the next book I'm working on, they've practically written for me, just in the amount of dark, twisted goings-ons that there's going to be a whole entire dossier of evidence put inside of it of how the direct for Supreme Council personnel eyes only documentation of how they lie and misrepresent what they are of themselves to the public. Oh, we're benign, we're just a good old fraternal order here and all this, and it's a string of lies. On that Supreme Council, I emphasize the Supreme Council and Scottish Rite as a whole, because any official in any local, or the Scottish Rite is present, I should say, in every major city in the world. And if you are an official in that that valley, then you certainly know what's going on. You're just not saying anything about it because you don't want to rock the boat, or you yourself want to climb high or think you're going to get more power, and it never works out for these guys. So,
How many 33 degree? Well, how many 32 degree Masons are there right now in the United States that have been sucked into this the Scottish Rite?
when I exited with the fear of my life being the reason why, in 2010, I was in Dallas. Dallas being the largest valley in the world, larger than even DC, they had a current member base at that time of approximately 4,500 and dwindling. So, other Scottish Rite valleys around the United States might have populations of, say, at most 500 or something like that, maybe 1,000 if there's still a lot of timers left around. But that's the thing. You know, they've
But
had
add it up. I mean, that's a lot nationwide. I mean, you add those numbers up, and it's easy to get a million, 1,000 cities, 1,000 members is a million people.
approximately 5 million Masons in the continental United States.
Okay.
Heavy concentration in the South.
Okay. Well, and I could see, especially in these bigger population center, New York, Boston, DC, there's obviously a selfish motivation, I would think, for a lot of these people to continue with it, as you said, because they think there's a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow. And I'm sure, clarify this for me. I mean, a lot of these people that play ball do end up being put into positions of power on multiple levels, right? Even from county all the way up, to state and federal. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? Wow. James, I'm sorry, man. That went really, really quick. We're going to take our last break of this first hour. We'll pick up with that question on the backside of this break. If you're on Justin TV, you might hear him answer it during this break, but we'll cover it again when we come back. Hang tight. Guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath, your host, along with James Wright, author of Freemasonry's Cult Abuses. You can get the book at New Falcon Publications. Go there, New Falcon Publications. Just put that in Google. It'll take you. You can go right to their website and go under politics, and you'll find the book there, Freemasons Cult Abuses. If and I asked him during the break, this is the book you want to read to understand the structure, soup to nuts. And I was saying as we went back on the air, I need to get this book and read it because you're giving us a lot of good information, but we're only having about 40 minutes of talk time here. So I'm either going to have you on 50 days in a row to probably cover the information that's in that book, or get the book and read it. And with this being the last segment, we have about 10 minutes left with you. You've got me to understand, how it goes from a benevolent organization locally, in these blue lodges, to where this hierarchical Scottish Rite takes over, and then they use this collusion and arm twisting globally to funnel all this money back to D.C., where the Supreme Council is. Give me an idea, and as we said during the break, of what to look for in society now that is being dominated and affected and controlled by the Masons. And with that, I mean, do you see or know of specific agenda that is yet to be achieved that we can unfortunately look forward to coming in the future?
Yes, like we were talking about during the break, these people are guilty of war crimes. Albert Pike, in his letter to Manzini in 1871, wrote about the 3 world wars they wanted to see come and pass. And 1 and 2 went off exactly as he wrote, just as he wrote the ritual for the Ku Klux Klan and the Scottish Rite, etc. So now we're in a period of history where we're seeing his 3rd world war of how it's described. Looks like it's beginning. This is scary stuff. People talk about the World Bank corruption. Well, never mind using the word Illuminati. There's a current lawsuit at the United Nations in New York with Vatican high-level personnel, Masonic agents of the highest level, all with their hands in the cookie jar. Billions of dollars are missing. Financial institutions are suing each other. This is the type of stuff that people grasp that's going on, that it's just very difficult to draw the connections. And these are the connections. That Supreme Council should absolutely be shut down and run out of business immediately by pure public outcry, government action, whatever it takes. I mean, if I myself have to go start an Occupy movement, I may well do so on their front steps, because it's coming to that. It's to the point where they want dominion over everything that they consider to be esoteric, uh, political connections, whatever. And you were talking about threats earlier. I mean, just to walk a day in my shoes, the morning before last, I woke up to something very typical: 6 consecutive death threats in my email inbox. So once again, I had to spend the day, talking with law enforcement and handing over material and all that, because I try to keep on top of that. So there's always a record of it. From the moment all this started, before I ever even considered writing a book, they put it to me very plainly that they would, if I did anything, if I was a loose cannon, they would see to it there'd be a car accident, things like this, and it's progressed from there. The threats have gotten much more blunt, much more direct. That's why.
Did the threats start when? I mean, did you go to somebody that was higher up than you in the organization? I mean, you went the path of Scottish Rite, correct?
Yes, and as I was working for the Supreme Council, the man who I called with the top job is Ronald Seal, the Sovereign Grand Commander. So when everything started going south, and when everyone was exhibiting these very intrusive, very cult like mind control imposed. I mean, there are a lot of guys. The mind control we could do a whole show on. I'm telling you, it's out of this world. The degrees they take it, playing with the dead bodies and the rituals and all this, it really warps the mind. Just like the oaths of the Blue Lodge, they're very murderous, blood-curdling oaths, and that's where that obedience, that blind obedience, starts. So, you can let your imagination run wild with what some guys are willing to do and do. So.
So when you had enough, you decided you're stepping away. Did the threat start immediately?
Yes, I contacted Ronald Seal because he is, as I said, the guy with the top job, the ultimate authority on whatever's going down. And at first, he said he was going to help, but then there was this sudden gag order put on everything. Everybody was told not to discuss it. They told me not to return back to the building. And then after deep reflection and a bit of a depression, I, decided to write the book and come out publicly with what I knew and what was going on, and, lay it out the way it really is, and not the way that their PR machine and grip on the mainstream media paints it. Which, for instance, if you're watching History Channel or Discovery Channel and you're seeing a show about Freemasonry, they always call someone from the Supreme Council. Usually Ronald Seal or S. Brent Morris or Arturo de Hoyos, one of those three, and they always come on to represent all of Freemasonry, when technically the Scottish Rite doesn't even own the rights. United Grand Lodge of England does. But you get these Supreme Council guys sitting there talking about how lovable and huggable they are, and they're not. They're ogres. They're complete, vicious, vile, power-drunk, very occultic, dark, brooding men who do not ever want to face the fact of change, or their position being threatened, or their grip on power being lessened. They'll do whatever it takes. And there's been attempts on my life. I'm currently in hiding on a ranch in the mountains. I mean, it's gone to such complete ridiculous levels. But I believe in the work I'm doing. I'm not going down without a fight. If I'm the only person who can bring this out, then so be it. And I'll just have to pay the consequences, but I don't ever indulge in self-pity. So
six death threats yesterday. And how long ago? And you left 2010, so two years ago. I'm imagining you've seen a number of threats. And have you had people show up? I mean, have they tracked you down, or?
Charlie, I've been followed by more little black cars, had my photograph taken more times than I can count, dead animals.
How do you even know if you report these death threats to the police? How do you know you're not going to get one of these guys showing up who's a cop, who's on the list?
Unfortunately, I ran into that a lot under Dallas police circumstances. Not to knock the Dallas police, they do a good job, but they have a lot of Masons in their ranks. The good news is, like with the threats that came in the other day, because of where I am, the law enforcement here, it's a small mountain town. They don't have a lot to do. So fortunately, they are launching their own investigation, which Dallas will have to respond to. I gave depositions, evidence. They have all they need to proceed, which it's already an FBI case as well at the same time. So you can imagine how mad they are that for the first time in history, this group is being investigated by local, state, and federal authorities. Mm-hmm. And they're mad. They're extremely upset with me. I've become a massive thorn in their side. So, I don't think anyone's going to shoot me or hang me or anything, because it would be too obvious. It would give it away. They've been trying to tag me as he's mentally unstable, to try to set the stage for like a suicide explanation or something. And no, I'm not. I'm feeling perfectly fine, other than wondering why it's come to a point where I'm having to hide in the mountains.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, and let me ask you, because we're going to have 2 minutes left, and I promise I'm going to get you back on if you want to come back on to get further in. I would love to do your experience and your information on mind control, as well as you said they use remote viewing. I'd love to hear what the Freemasons.
This bloodline stuff too. I come from one of those families, and
yeah, we didn't even get into that. I mean, your family. I mean, are you disowned at this point?
Oh, absolutely. My aunt came to me when she figured out from one of her little spies of my vast relatives that I was nearing completion of writing this book. They wondered what I'd been doing typing so much, and she came to me once she knew what was up, and she told me, "Burn it. Your grandfather would disown you. He would be mortified. He himself was a former 33rd Secretary General, very prominent Mason." Yeah, and I told her I was not going to, and she said, "Please leave my house." So, wow. Yeah, and she was the programmer of the family, so I would expect no less of a reaction from her. And she has Alzheimer's, so I don't ultimately hold it against her. So... Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it just the depths and the history. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. We're so used to, just thinking about our own experience in 20, 40, 70, 80 years. But the history and how entrenched this organization is. But it sounds like, talking to you, and we're going to run out of time here, but it sounds like talking to you that it isn't that all Freemasonry is bad. It's been co-opted and corrupted, and you're saying in the last century or so. Did I get that right? By the Scottish Rite?
Yes.
Let me ask you this real quick before we run out of time, and Brett, please hold down the music till he answers this. Before you leave, how entrenched are they in our political and financial system, the Scottish Rite and Freemasonry, entrenched in we see the headlines of banking fraud and what's going on around globally, and in our political system, what kind of influence are they wielding?
Absolutely everything, everywhere, wherever they can get it. If you look up the definition of psychopathy, it's men who gravitate toward positions of power, and that's exactly what your higher-ups on that Supreme Council do. That's how they get away with it. That's what's going on in the world, and people should really, really be alarmed by their activities.
But we have infighting within Masonry right now, right?
Oh, of course. You get a bunch of guys drunk on power. What do you think will happen?
Yeah. All right, man. Fascinating stuff, James. Definitely gonna get you back on, guys. I'm gonna drop the link to this publisher in the chat room right now. New Falcon Publications. Go to New Falcon Publications. Click on the politics for the category, and get a hold of his book. Get a copy of his book there. Freemasons Cult Abuse. Please, support his work, support what he's doing, so he can keep continuing bringing us this information. James, we'll get you on again real soon.
Thank you, Charlie.
You bet. Thank you very much. Guys, stay tuned. We're going to be back after this break with Rob Hannes, and we're going to talk, into the world stuff and prep. All right, we'll be back in a few.